The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands has the right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. C'est un grand honneur pour moi.
It is a great honor for me to rise today to speak to this legislation, and hopefully this will be the last hour of debate after years of work on this bill, which is very important for Wales throughout the world.
I'm honored to rise this morning because we're at the point where most members in this place appear ready to see this legislation passed. The legislation was first brought forward in the last few days of the Senate sitting of 2015. It is, to put it mildly, Mr. Speaker, it has been a long haul. Because I have right of reply, and because I just heard the honourable member raise concerns, and I think all concerns by my colleagues in the place are legitimate concerns, so I think it's important for anyone who's watching this debate to recognize that this bill is based on science. Many scientists testified to why it was critical that we stop keeping cetaceans in captivity. We understand why, because they are obviously not akin to other, for instance, livestock. Cetaceans require the ocean. They require the space. They require acoustic communication over long distances. And the scientists who testified before the committee, who made the case so strongly, made it based on science. Yes, Canadians care. And yes, the school children who've written us in the hundreds and in the thousands were not moved by the science. They were moved by knowing, because they've seen movies and nature films, and they understand that whales and dolphins and porpoises are of a different character than other animals. But I would reassure my friend that you couldn't just substitute the name for another species. Bill S-203 is firmly tied into the Fisheries Act, and I don't think we would find any horses in the wild in the ocean. So I think we know that we've tied it down legislatively in a way that others shouldn't worry that there will be a creeping effect. Mr. Speaker, I do want to say in the time remaining how grateful I am for the nonpartisan spirit. It's been my entire honor to be the sponsor of this legislation in the House. I am enormously grateful to my colleagues. I mentioned the scientists. Let me thank Dr. Visser, who testified at committee coming in by Skype from New Zealand and in the days right after the Christchurch killings. So it was an emotional time for everyone. Dr. Naomi Rose, and of Dalhousie University, Dr. Hal Whitehead. The former whale trainer at Marineland, Phil Demers, offered very excellent real-life testimony as to the cruelty of keeping whales in captivity. Certainly Senator Wilfred Moore, Senator Murray Sinclair have done an enormous amount to help, but so too has the government representative in the Senate, Senator Harder. And I do want to thank the current Minister of Fisheries, as well as his predecessor Minister of Fisheries, for taking companion elements to S-203 and embedding them in C-68. C-68, the reform of the Fisheries Act, remains before the Senate. I really do want to take a moment to urge all colleagues in that other place to get C-68 through, and for everyone here, if there's, where there are amendments, that we get C-68 through, because the Fisheries Act is critically important on many scores, and as well as companion to S-203 before us today. Again, in a nonpartisan spirit, the honourable member for Port Moody Coquitlam, we will miss him in this place, the honourable member for Skeena Bulkley Valley, and I also want to mention his constituent, Ben Corving, who had put forward the legislation to zero waste packaging. I pledge, as leader of the Green Party, to take on Ben Corving's motion and make sure it doesn't die in this place, because they made a sacrifice to allow this bill to get through before we rise at the end of June. I also want to thank the honourable member for Beaches East York, a Liberal. I want to thank my friend from Courtenay, Alberni, who was gracious in his praise earlier. Everyone pulled together on this. The member for Charlottetown, the parliamentary secretary, helped enormously. The member for Repentigny, mon ami de Bloc Québécois.
My friend from the Bloc, I'd like to thank you very much.
I know there are conservative colleagues who did what they could. I can't tell you how important this legislation is. I want to be sure to close with a few words that we haven't heard in this place before, but they're from the book of Job. And they are found at chapter 41, verse 1. Behold Behemoth, which I made as I made you. He is the first of the works of God. Can you draw out Leviathan with a fishhook or press down his tongue with a cord? Can you put a rope in his nose or pierce his jaw with a hook? Will the traders bargain over him? Will they divide him up as the merchants? Upon earth there is not his like. He beholds everything that is high. He is king over all the sons of pride. For everyone in this place, let's think for a moment. We behold Leviathan. He belongs in the wild. He will never again be placed in a swimming pool in this country.